Okay, welcome back. We are joined by this year's CCC champion, Toni McCann. Thanks for coming back in studio.
Thanks for having me back again.
Yes. So we were just chit-chatting here while we waited for the boys to get the cameras all set up. And you said that this year it's taken a little bit longer to set in. Last year when you won OCC, it hit you kind of immediately, the gravity of your achievement. How are you feeling now with, what has it been, like a day and a half since you finished?
Yeah, I think it's going to take a bit more processing time. It's weird. Last year, like when I finished OCC, there was just like this immediate rush of emotion. And this year, it's for sure taken longer to set in. I think it was such a long day out. And I think I kind of emptied my emotion tank out there. And now I just need to kind of debrief, and hopefully that'll settle. And it's definitely started kicking in. I got very emotional this morning. But it's still pretty unreal, honestly.
Unbelievable. Congratulations, and so well deserved. So before we start talking about your race, we were also just chatting about Vincent, who was just here in studio with us. And you made the comment that you guys had a chance to do a little bit of training together. Maybe you know him a little bit. I'm sure the audience would be interested to hear you talk about him, especially understanding what he just accomplished this weekend too. Honestly,
I like I said to you, like I'm probably more excited at this point about his race and his achievement than my own. Just like the most humble, kind guy, and like we got to do some runs together. And every time we ran together, it was just like mind blown at how strong he was. And just chatting to him and like hearing him vocalize like how he felt about the race and how he was approaching it. It was just all like super meticulous, and he had thought through everything. He's a numbers guy, so he like had planned everything out, and it was just cool to hear him speak about it. And he had made the comment that he like knew he was able to keep up with the guys' pace up until maybe about halfway, and then it was kind of going to be a gamble and to see how he felt. And he pulled it together, and him and his wife Camilla are like the best pair. They had dream team day yesterday.
Yeah, she was here too, and it's funny because he did hold the pace for the first half, and it was right there at halfway where he took the lead. But
it's amazing.
Anyway, such a great story. But coming back to your story, and another amazing story from race weekend, I've got a fun anecdote to share. I want to get your reaction to. You now enter an elite category of people who have won multiple of the world final events here at UTMB. Blandine Lahirondelle, Ruth Croft, Jonathan Albin, Xavier Thévenard, Toni McCann. I believe you are the only 5 to have multiple victories in the world final events. How does it feel to enter that elite company?
Those are all names that like I knew coming into the sport. They were like the people that I always looked up to. To be part of that group of people is mind-blowing, honestly. I don't think I've got words to express how like that feels. It's just it doesn't feel real. That feels like I'm living outside. I'm not living in my body right now. This is like me looking on someone else's life and going, that's cool. Yeah. That's really cool for you. Wild. Never expected my name to be among those amazing people.
Yeah, to me it feels like, of course, they're all legends, right? And they're all like veterans too, and it feels like you're still very much in the early phases of your career.
I hope so.
Yeah, we all hope so. I guess knock on wood. Nothing is guaranteed, but congratulations. And I think that's an important storyline of race weekend. Is there's very few people who've been able to do that, and I think going forward, at least to me, the mark of great champions are those who can be versatile, compete across different terrains and race distances, and you've now proven the ability to do that on debut. One of our colleagues, Travis Longcar, sent me a note this morning that I hadn't absorbed personally yet, which is that last year's OCC podium on the women's side swept the world finals. So for our audience, Mao Yao won OCC. She was third to you and Katie last year at OCC. Of course, Katie Scheid was second to you at OCC last year. She wins UTMB. You won OCC last year and you win CCC.
Super cool. A little bit of a prediction.
Yeah. Do you guys have a connection at all, or was there anything between the three of you that our audience might find interesting?
I mean, I feel like I've gotten a little bit closer to Katie this year. Just we spent a bit of time together in Auburn before Western States, and we've chatted a couple times on Instagram, and we both very much have voiced our admiration for each other. But we don't really get to see each other much throughout the year. But I think there's definitely that connection, and we've definitely all acknowledged what happened this year after OCC last year, and kind of like all of us being on the podium this year it's a pretty cool reality. It's like how things have played out. It's pretty serendipitous.
A great story that connects the 2023 edition with the 2024 edition.
Yeah.
Okay, so talking specifically about the race, you heading to the start line in Courmayeur on Friday. Where was your headspace at? Did you have any specific thoughts as you were going to be making your 100K debut?
I feel like I didn't prepare myself mentally well enough for this, and this is definitely a learning that I've taken away from this, is that I wasn't ready for 100Ks mentally. So going into it, I kind of just was, I hadn't quite visualized what 100Ks would feel like well enough. So I wasn't really that scared or nervous. Like, I was excited to get going and relieved that the start was finally there, but I wasn't afraid of the distance. I should have been. It was really hard. But yeah, overwhelmingly, I was just like really happy to finally get this thing started, because I think the build up throughout the week is always really intense, and like there's always a lot of emotion, and at the end of the day, you kind of just want to get the thing done. That's what you're here for. So it was, I was super happy to get going eventually.
To what extent do you set a race plan, and to what extent do you follow it? I think the audience would love to hear how the plans end up mapping to the reality of the race.
So I gave myself splits for the whole race, and I had obviously planned then my nutrition accordingly. The splits I use mostly for my crew, honestly. I kind of do them and then try and forget about them, because I feel like if you put too much pressure on hitting those splits, it can kind of mess you up, especially if you fall behind. It becomes really hard then to mentally motivate yourself to keep going and try and like keep hitting splits. So for me, once I've done those, I give them to my crew, and I'm like, okay, those are yours to now deal with. Do with them what you will. Nutrition wise, I plan pretty much every hour, or try to. And this race, I particularly planned like around where I knew I could get water, or like where I knew there were potentially going to be water sources en route. And yeah, I'm fairly happy with how my nutrition plan went. I definitely didn't eat as much as I wanted to. I think the heat kind of got to me in that sense. But overall, I'm pretty happy with how that plan went out. I don't think I plan as meticulously as a lot of people do. I like to wing it a little bit, because at the end of the day, with this kind of distance, so much can change. So having a loose plan is a good idea, but I think if you rely too heavily on things going as you had set out, as chances are pretty high that it's not going to go that way. So for me, being a bit flexible is really important.
So you took the lead very early and held it to the finish line. One of the things we were talking about last night is that basically all three of the women's champions won in almost wire-to-wire fashion at the World Final events, which was kind of interesting. But I think I think the audience would love to hear you talk about that front-running style, and psychologically it being your 100K debut. You know, what's giving the confidence that you are racing in an intelligent way when you're off the front in one of the most competitive races in the world?
I don't think there was anything intelligent about the way that I raced on Friday. I feel like that first 50K, I felt really, the first 30K, I felt really good. And then the climb up to Grand Corveret and then down to La Folie was really hard. And I feel like that's mentally where I had my biggest low. Heading up towards Champerlac, you kind of come down La Folie and no one really warns you, especially if you haven't recce'd the route, which I regret. I know I said I was excited about it, but it was a terrible idea. Yeah. So that section between La Folie and Champerlac is really long, and it's actually super hot and exposed, and it's very rolling. And that was like the hardest part of the race for me, because you can see where you're going and it feels so far away. Yeah. I guess the thing that motivated me throughout the race was knowing that Martina was actually pretty close behind me and we had remained fairly consistent, and knowing that she wasn't gaining any ground on me but also not dropping back made me pretty confident that the pace that I was running, as long as I could maintain that, things could potentially keep playing out well, and that I was hopefully going on, a reasonably good pace. Another thing that also really helped was that I managed to catch up to one of my South African friends, Daniel Klaassen, and I know he's run this race before and he was going for a sub 12 hour. So I knew that if I could kind of keep pace with him, I was probably going for, a reasonably good time. And
you finished in 11:57.
Yeah, perfect timing. No, and honestly, running with him was mentally a really good thing for me. He really helped me kind of pull me out that low spot. But yeah, running from the front is never easy. But I think I prefer that.
Is that your typical style? Because I think I remember at Broken Arrow you were off the front early, and then last year you and Mao Yao were duking it out at the front of OCC before you ultimately got the better of her.
Yeah. I think I've gotten, when I first started racing in Europe, I was never front running. I was always trying to play catch up, and I don't mind that style of running. I think there's a lot less like adrenaline associated with that type of running, but I do enjoy being chased more so than chasing. So if I feel confident that the pace is sustainable up the front, I would rather be there than chasing. It's definitely not the easiest way to race, I think, because you do have a lot of pressure then to keep going at that pace. But yeah, I guess that is kind of my style.
Yeah. Okay. You mentioned Martina Milak, who finished second. How much did you know about her coming into the race?
Not at all, honestly.
Yeah, neither did I.
Yeah,
okay,
not at all.
So I'm glad you said that, because I was feeling like an ignorant, fraud of a trail expert here in my armchair that I've been sitting in all week.
I feel like this year has highlighted. In my mind, it's like the year of the rookie, and I consider myself a rookie in this distance, and like. Vincent, perfect example, he was someone that no one knew about and he absolutely smashed it out the park. Martina, again, had an amazing race on, no one really knew about her. Mm-hmm. And I feel like this year has really highlighted that, there's so many unsung potential talents that are coming up in the sport. And I think more and more we're going to be blown away by people that we've never heard of. And just you can show up at any start line and you'll see names that you recognize, but those aren't necessarily the people that you need to be scared of. Yeah,
so maybe going one step deeper on that, Martina kept it close for a really long time. To what extent were you feeling the pressure from her, even though you were off the front? She did keep it interesting for those of us who were spectating all day.
I definitely felt the pressure from her, but I think it was good for me. It kept me mentally engaged. And I feel like if she had been further away, I would have potentially switched off and like lost a bit of focus, which when you're racing, you can't lose focus. You can't switch off like that. So she was really like a very helpful motivation for me. I think for me, I knew that she was probably descending better than I was, which was really frustrating because descending is normally where I feel like I excel. But I also knew that I was potentially climbing a little bit better than her. So I was really pushing the climbs, knowing that, she was probably going to catch up a bit on the descents. And the other thing that I think was really beneficial was having Bast as my crew. Yeah. He was like Formula One. And I know that in Triant, that's where we made up a lot of that time that I got into Velocine. So crewing is, you make up a lot of time there if you can.
Bastian's going to be in the crewing Hall of Fame at this point. Summarize his accomplishments as a crew member, crew chief.
I mean, he was he's never been in the tent, I think, with Jim, but he was part of Jim's crew last year and the year before as well. He's always been kind of on the sideline of Western States as well. So he knows how to navigate a crew tent. That's for sure.
He should have a high price point and sell his services to professional trail runners.
Oh, maybe he should give out trail running crewing lessons.
Yeah, there you go. Create an online course for some of us. Yeah. So I saw all the leaders come through up at Bonatti prior to the climb up the Grand Colfray. So early in the race, and it was already getting warm. In fact, many people kind of complaining about it. It felt to me like a tough day. Did it feel that way to you? And to what extent did the heat impact your performance? Was there anything that you did to sort of take care of yourself out there? Because we saw what happened in UTMB. There was a decent amount of attrition in CCC as well.
Honestly, I feel like I only really felt the heat between probably La Folie and Champelac. That's probably where I felt it the most. But yeah, I feel like my South African blood really shone through, and the heat didn't bother me too much. But yeah, there's a really great video of me on the UTMB site where they compare me to a man falling into a pool, and I basically just like dive headfirst into one of the troughs. And pretty much that's what I did when I felt like I was getting hotter. That whole section, I basically just dunked my head and then kept going. And that was really helpful. But yeah, I don't feel like there was ever a point in the race where I was like, oh dang, I'm really hot now, and like I need to rein it in because this is getting hard. So yeah, I don't know. I feel like the heat could have definitely been a factor Friday. More so with my nutrition, I just really struggled to get in anything solid. But otherwise, yeah, I felt like the heat was bad, but it wasn't terrible for me.
So Martina kept it within a handful of minutes of separation for the first 60, 70K. And then it seemed like you were really able to extend that lead, say, between Trient and the finish. Anything you want to add about that section of the course, or when you started to feel confident that you may be able to achieve this dream of securing another victory here at UTMB weekend?
I feel like the point where I was like, okay, I feel like I could maybe get this to the finish line was probably coming into Vallorcine. I knew that I had extended my lead a little bit, and yeah, I just knew that I felt like I had enough in the tank to keep running at the same pace. Nothing felt. Someone said
falling apart.
I wasn't falling apart, and someone had mentioned to me, you may as well run hard from the start because at some point it's going to hurt, but once it starts hurting, it's not going to get worse. Yeah. So I knew, hopefully, that the pain was probably not going to get worse. So that if I could just keep running at the same pace and keep consistent as I had been doing, hopefully the whole day, I could potentially keep pulling maybe a little bit further away, even if I could just maintain. I think coming into Vallorcine, I had around 8 minutes, and that was enough. Like I only needed that much as a buffer, and from there I could kind of relax. And I think that helped in that final climb, just giving me a bit more. Because
it was like 17 minutes at the finish, I think, wasn't it?
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah. Okay, I'll double check on that, but I think it was something like that.
Okay.
So it was very close for much of the day, and then it was really that final climb when the elastic well and truly broke.
I mean, that final climb, if you look at the videos of me, you probably wouldn't say that I was pulling away. Yeah, it was a tough climb.
Everybody suffers on that climb, not just you, Toni. So you got over the top of the climb, you dropped back down into town. Just reflect on the emotion of coming through the finishing arch. I saw the video of you and Bastian afterwards. Your family, I think, was here. At least your mom was here to see you race. Here, Of course, it's a long journey for her to come and witness this performance. What was it like to win again?
So I was looking through some photos of the finish line this morning, actually, and two really stood out to me, both of my mom and Bastian. And it was their faces as their faces as I was climbing up Flagey, and you can just see the emotion on their faces and like how it's like they're in pain for me, and there's just so much concern and love in their faces, and the emotion is so real. And for me, that's like, I feel like that's what I'm going to remember coming through that finish line. It's just being able to cross and look at them and see them, and to see just like how happy they are for me. Yeah. There's nothing that can compare to that. Finishing the line in first is amazing, but finishing the line to people that you love who have been there throughout the whole day and who have like helped you through it is, it's something that you can't really explain. You can only feel. And I think that for me is going to be the highlight of this whole UTMB, is just having them there and having them there throughout the day. But particularly like just seeing that the expressions on their faces as I finished is just, for me, that was the cherry on top of a great day.
Oh, such a beautiful thing. Okay, so the CCC victory earns you a golden ticket to Western States. Those of us in the studio here, for better or worse, are Americans. So I have to ask you, how are you thinking about the opportunity to come to our neck of the woods, a place where you paced your good friend and teammate Ingvild Kaspersen to maybe take on our most iconic race in the U.S.? next year or in the future?
It's a race on the bucket list for sure. After having experienced it this year, it's definitely something that I would like to do. And next year, I would potentially like to be there again. Maybe as a runner, yes. But most likely as a crew or pacer again. I think, this is my first 100K. That felt really far. The idea of stepping up to 100 miles is just like incomprehensible to me right now. And maybe if you ask me in 2 weeks, I'll have changed my mind. But I really, having run 100Ks now, it actually, people always say, once you've gone to 100Ks, you'll never be able to go back down to 50K. And I'm like, actually, I have so much more respect for a 50K now because, a lot of the climbs that we do in the back half of this race is OCC route as well. And hiking up them during CCC, I was just like, OCC last year, I was running all of these. You're redlining way harder the whole route. And like CCC, you're hiking a lot of it. My heart rate was really low most of the day. So I have a lot of respect now for a 50K. I think it's a very hard event and it's super tactical. And I would love to bop between the 50 and 100K for a little bit longer before I step up to 100 miles. I think there's a lot to learn still before I jump up.
Okay, so 2 comments. Number 1, Western States is only like 16 hours. You just did 12-hour race. It's not that big of a jump up.
True.
In time, even though it's a jump up in distance. And number 2, I think what you said is a really important thing for our audience. I mean, to me, as I think about race weekend, OCC was, I think, one of, if not the most exciting races of the weekend.
Oh, yeah.
And I just think that it's such an exciting time in the sport because the level is so high across all of those distances. And the experiences are so different. The race tactics are so different. It just adds incredible depth. And even though UTMB sort of, is the most legendary race of the week, OCC is just as competitive and frankly, potentially even more exciting.
Yeah. I mean, for me, watching OCC is always like, biting your nails. Anything can happen. The climb up to Flagey, even the descent into Sham, like, guaranteed things are going to change and like anything can happen. And for me, that is just, it's just as a watcher of the race, it's so exciting.
Yeah.
OCC UTMB, generally by Flagey, it's decided. So you're kind of just waiting to cheer them in. Still really interesting to watch, but like,
it's true.
It's for me as a spectator, I love a 50K.
Okay. So maybe final question for you then. Having gotten a little bit of rest after CCC, did you go out on course for UTMB? Are there any thoughts in your head about how UTMB played out or any, experiences out on the course that were particularly powerful?
I couldn't do much yesterday, honestly. Yeah. I don't know if you saw me getting on stage, but I needed help getting up and down. And so I wasn't very mobile and unfortunately I couldn't get out on route much, but I was for sure streaming all day. Mm-hmm. I think my final feeling towards this whole weekend, not just UTMB, but just this whole weekend has been that, like, as I said, like the year of the rookie. I just feel like there's so much talent and there's so much development in the sport, and like you see it every year with records falling. Like Katie breaking Courtney's record is just like mind blowing.
Crazy.
And like Vincent coming in under 20 hours. In like his first big UTMB, like first big event, really. I think he's done 2 other events before this of note. And like, I just think that's super exciting. I think the sport is going to explode and like, we're going to see more and more crazy things. So yeah, I'm excited to be a part of this growth and development and looking forward to the years to come.
A perfect place to end. Toni McCann, congratulations on another victory here. Thanks for coming in studio.
Thank you for having me.